Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee.
Good evening. Welcome to this installment of the Kuhn Academy, where we are building responsible voters one video at a time. All right, we're going to talk to you today about how a bill becomes a law. And it's actually one of the first civics lessons you ever get in your life because you're studying Schoolhouse Rocks, watching your cartoons in the morning, and you hear all about I'm just a bill. Okay, so we got lots of steps. This edition is going to focus more on the House and their procedures that we just finished debating here in class on Friday. All right, so obviously a bill has to be introduced, all right? We should know that it comes from members of the House, members of the Senate. So a bill can come either in the House or from the Senate. House can only introduce revenue bills. I shouldn't phrase it that way. Only revenue bills can come from the House, all right? So the House is close to the people. Revenue bills are tax bills. So if a bill is going to increase your taxes to generate more revenue, it must come from the House of Representatives. The Senate can also deal with revenue bills, but they can't start them. They can only revise or amend them, okay? And revenue is to take in money. Appropriations is to spend it. Both sides can do the appropriating of money, okay? Now, there's a lot of parts to a bill, and it can get somewhat complicated, okay? Bills are always assigned numbers, all right? It's either HR or S are the types of bills. They always put that before the number. You have to know that because if you ever call your congressman, you can't say, hey, I want Brad Schneider to vote down going to war with Syria. You would say, I want Brad Schneider to vote against HR 257 or something like that, okay? The bill then gets sent to a committee who is going to review the bill and study it further. This decision is made by the Speaker of the House. In the House, he will assign which committee that bill goes to, okay? Now, our types of committees, okay, we have several, all right? Most importantly are your standing committees. Those are permanent committees that exist from one house to the next. They will always be there, okay? In the House, we have an Appropriations Committee, Rules Committee, a Ways and Means Committee. There's a whole bunch in your book. Those are really the big ones to know. Okay, you got to know appropriations because they're the ones that spend money. That's where the pork barrel comes in, etc. All right, Rules Committee is the one that determines when and how long the bill will be talked about. And then Ways and Means is really critical. It's probably the most important of all of them because it's only in the House of Representatives. So hopefully you know that that is the committee that deals with revenue bills. Okay, there's only a Ways and Means Committee in the House. The Senate does not have one because they don't get to initiate revenue bills. So if you're on that committee, you can control tax policy. All right, in the Senate, there's an Appropriations Committee also to spend money. Okay, there is a Finance Committee in the Senate. Their job is to amend revenue bills. Okay. And change them. So they can still affect tax policy. They just have to amend bills that were already sent over from the House. Okay. There's a Senate Judiciary Committee that deals with usually with confirmation of Supreme Court judges and stuff. And then Foreign Relations Committee deals with treaties and other things. Okay. So those are the types of standing committees. We also have select committees in the House of in the House and Senate. These are temporary committees that only exist for a certain issue, and when that issue is addressed, they dissolve and go away. There are joint committees, all right? That's usually where we discuss the legalization of marijuana and other drug. No, I'm just kidding. That's actually committees of both the House and the Senate to tackle a certain problem or deal with an issue. They're also temporary because there's no permanent joint committees, so they're also select, but it just happens to have members of both. During the Civil War, there was a joint committee on the conduct of the war. That obviously was there to see how the Civil War was going, okay? There was a joint select committee to deal with the debt problem a couple of years ago. That was kind of a big debacle. And then finally, we have conference committees, and their job is to meet to rectify bills that pass in different versions. So if the House passes a bill, Senate passes a bill, and they look different, the conference committee will rectify those and decide which bill is going to pass and work out the differences. A lot of negotiations and things go on in conference committees. Okay, back to our steps in a bill becoming a law. Once the bill goes to a committee, all right, the bill can be assigned to a subcommittee by the chairperson of that committee. Okay, if it goes to a subcommittee, they're just going to study it further and do more research. They don't really vote on it; they just add more things to the bill and maybe do some hearings. Okay, the chairperson could also pigeonhole the bill. Okay, when you pigeonhole a bill, you are ignoring it and letting it go to die. Okay, it's said because in the old days with the old ink top desks that you might see in museums and stuff, the congressman would roll the bill up and stick it in the ink holes in those desks, and it would look like a pigeon had come through and pecked holes in the desk. So when you pigeonhole a bill, you're just letting it die in committee. Now, there's a check on that, which is called a discharge petition. If a majority of the people in the House vote to bring the bill out of committee after it has been pigeonholed, then that bill has to go to the floor for a vote. So it's basically the majority's way of bringing a bill to the floor and getting around a committee chairperson. Now you're probably saying, well, that doesn't happen too often because the majority party also chooses the chairman of the committee. So what are the odds of the majority party making the committee chair look bad and going around that with a discharge petition? But there technically is that law to bring it out of committee in their rules. Okay, they do hold hearings. You can go to cspan.org and look in committee hearing and probably see some of the most exciting videos you will have ever seen in your life, and it may take up your Saturday night for all I know. Okay, the subcommittee could report the findings back to the full committee, do their research, and then the full committee will vote on the bill to decide if they want to pass it or not. Right? If the bill passes the committee, which is controlled by the majority party, then it goes to the floor for a vote. All right. At the end of that committee hearing, they do what's called a markup session, which is where they make revisions and additions to the bill. It's where a lot of your pork gets written in, okay, and they add stuff to it. So it gets marked up by the different congressmen on the committee, and different changes and things get made to it. So let's say they know they need a vote from a member from Florida. They might put a pork or an ear rider into the bills for alligator research or something like that. I'm just making something up, okay? And then they also do amendments and riders, okay? The difference between pork and an amendment is a change to the wording of the bill or the way the bill is actually written, where pork is something that's just thrown in at the end that has nothing to do with the bill. It's just thrown in as its own little deal, okay? So in the House, they have a rule about amendments to the bills, okay? The rule is called the germaneness rule. Germaneness, great word wall word, 5 extra points on Monday morning. A germaneness rule says that if you're going to make an amendment to a bill in the House, the amendment has to be germane to the bill. It has to deal with the topic of the bill, okay? If you have a bill about transportation funding, you cannot put an amendment in there saying that we have to, donate 20 cruise missiles to Israel, because that has nothing to do with transportation. That amendment would not be allowed. The Senate has no germaneness rule. So in the Senate, they can make all kinds of changes to bills that have nothing to do with the real bill. So Senate legislation is going to look very different from House legislation. Okay? And then after it clears the committee, it gets sent to the floor for a vote. All right? Moving along here. Okay? House has a Rules Committee. The Rules Committee decides A, when it will be debated. 2, whether there will be an open or a closed rule. Okay? An open rule means you can make amendments on the floor for the bill. Okay? So the bill can get voted on or changed on the floor. That helps the minority party because they can't do anything in the committee to pass it, but once it goes to the floor, they can make changes. Closed rule, no amendments may be made once the bill reaches the floor. Okay, that's determined by the Rules Committee, and then they determine how long you will get to speak, how much time each member gets. It's usually between 2 and 3 minutes per member. Sometimes they donate that time back and then just let 2 or 3 people speak that way. So Rules Committee, open or closed rule, and debate time is crucial. Okay, the Speaker and the House Majority Leader decide when the bill will reach the floor, when it will go to a vote after it clears the Rules Committee. Okay, and then after that, okay, House has limited debate. All right, Rules Committee decides that, as we know. Okay, bill gets reported back to the House and voted on as a whole. Okay, majority vote wins in the House. That would be majority out of 218. And at some point in the House, they can do what's called a motion to suspend the rules. Okay, this probably isn't going to make the exam. This is just so you know a little bit what's going on. I have a good video I'll show you on Monday if you ask me about, maybe on Tuesday we'll watch this, about a good motion to suspend the rules. If somebody makes a motion to suspend the rules, okay, and that gets approved, then that means there will be no amendments to the bill. Debate is limited to 40 minutes, and it has to pass with a 2/3 majority. So the House does use a 2/3 majority in cases of motions to suspend the rules. Now, why would you do that? You would do this when you don't want the bill to change at all, you like its original structure, and you don't want a lot of discussion or debate on it, and you know it's going to pass, okay? So you know both parties are going to agree with it, and you get it done. All right, so that kind of concludes the House. Okay, there's some key terms in there, went a little longer than I'd wanted to, okay? But thanks for listening to the Kuhn Academy today, where we are building responsible voters one video at a time.